everyone, Steve Schlueter with Never Ending Referrals, and with me, my trusty sidekick, my co-coach, Tammi Juegnst. Thank you for being with us today. The time to winterize your business is right now, as everybody is dealing with storms rolling across the Midwest and the North. And my name's Steve Schlueter, and with me is my co-coach, Tammi Juegnst. Tammi, tell them a little bit about Tammi so they know who they're visiting with today.
Sure. I have been with Keller Williams for 20 years this year. I am a Bold coach, currently the director of Bold. I'm also a Keller Williams University Master Faculty Instructor, co-coach with Steve, Never Ending Referrals. Goodness gracious. Agent, first and foremost. I still have a team in Mooresville, North Carolina. And database is my jam, Steve.
There you go. Well, here we go. We go into it. Steve Schlueter, I'm a 37-year veteran of the real estate industry. Started at 23, do the math, all that good stuff. You can figure it out. And, here's the cool thing, Tammi, is I've been through many a shifting market. And what's cool about this is that you start to see patterns. You understand what's on the other side. And there are certain steps right now that we're going to go through today that you can take. They're going to absolutely position you for a spring explosion. So what you do now matters more than ever. And getting a great start into this year with some tactics, some conversations, and most importantly, being the trusted advisor. One of the things that we strive to do with our Never Ending Referrals community is to build an army of trusted advisors who are out there helping buyers and sellers get off the fence. Because let's face it, we're in a crazy, confusing, wackadoo real estate market. I mean, is that a fair statement, Tammi?
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know a better word. I mean, wackadoo is I've been through many. This is wackadoo. And so we're going to get right into this today. We're going to move fairly quickly in. Tammi, what's going to happen by the time we're done today? What will these guys have learned and experienced?
Truly how to become the trusted advisor and talk about what people really don't understand about this market, because when they don't understand or they don't have the right information, they don't make decisions. And so it's up to us to be the ones that carry the messaging to our folks so that they're educated.
There you go. Well, let's jump in. I'm going to pull up our slide deck to get us started. And let's see. Boom. And we got a lot of fine print today, so I'm going to put on my cheaters here so that we can work together to be as efficient as possible. And let me get this thing full screen for us. This other thing is in my way. Okay, let's move things around. All right, come on, tech. Let's get through the tech. So let's go to work here. And so the time to winterize your business is now. And as we get started today, let me kind of walk you through the journey that we intend to take you on. And, number one is today we're going to talk about you getting out and taking that position as the trusted real estate economist. And we're going to touch on the real estate economist consultation. Yet today, what we're really going to focus on are what are some of the messages that match the market, getting your offer right, what we call your MOFR. And Tammi, MOFR stands for?
Make offer for immediate response.
Making offers for immediate response. And we're going to talk about how we communicate this. And we'll actually model for you what it looks like to communicate what's happening in our market to the people in our database so that they trust you, they ask you, they listen to you when it comes to all things real estate. They trust you to give them the clarity. And we start off every session pretty much with our Never Ending Referrals community with this thing called the trust triangle. And I'm going to go through this quickly because we want to get to the meat of the conversation of being the trusted advisor. But that whole idea of trust, how do you build it? And number one is the logic piece. And the logic piece is making sure that we're communicating with the people in our database in a way where they know that our reasoning and judgment is sound. In other words, that we understand the market, the dynamics of the market, and what the market means to them. Tammi, what's the empathy piece?
Just them absolutely feeling like you care, like genuinely that you care. It's true that whole people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And it's just seeing things through their eyes and knowing that they care. And then what's the last piece?
Well, talk to us about that, Tammy, because what does it mean, the real you, this authenticity thing?
That's actually that's what ties all of this together and why it's at the top of the triangle is they have to know that they're getting the genuine you, that you're really being you, that you're not coming across salesy, and that wraps all of this together, which really means, Steve, ultimately that we're comfortable with the logic piece. We're really tuned in to them so that we can be authentic.
Yeah. Well, and when you're authentic and they trust that you know what you're talking about and the empathy is there, here's the thing, guys. This is in Bold, we talk about coming from contribution. And this is what coming from contribution feels like. And when you do that, you're never set up for rejection. That it just doesn't happen. People receive you and they receive you in a way as that advisor. So let's talk about we're gonna go through some of this today, and yet I'm just gonna look at some of our markets. Some of your markets are different, and yet in many of our markets today, here's what Gary Keller said about messages and MOFers. He said it's the agent with the right messages that match the market, combined with the right MOFer, that's going to win the market. And what does a message mean? Well, it means I put out something to stimulate interest for people that I'm targeting that fit a message that's appropriate for today, that would cause them to stop the scroll, read the email, listen on the phone call. And of course, the MOFer is the offer. So I think about some of our markets, and you'll see some evidence of this as we go through today. I know in some of my markets, buyers have a lot more breathing room than they had in the kind of COVID, even slightly post-COVID market when list to sales price ratios in one of my markets were as high as 117% of list price. And now in the same market, it's like 94.9. And that's a sign of, man, a lot of breathing room, ability to negotiate. We're also seeing a seasonal shift in a lot of our markets. And so right now, we have a seasonal shift in many of our markets where we've seen the curve come down slightly in median price. We've also seen a interest rate dip right now in anticipation of some things ahead, where we've seen a dip there as well. So there's a double dipping opportunity right now, seasonally. A lot of our markets still have really great market stability overall. They've seen some adjustments in the market. There's not a lot of inventory, which is keeping prices short up. We can build a message around market stability. I was doing Bold in Chicago this last round, very stable markets in Chicago. First-time buyers, they have less competition today, buyer assistance programs. Um, we can go to the housing shortage, the law of supply and demand. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, I believe, actually it was Freddie, said they anticipate or estimate that we have a 3.8 million unit housing shortage on single-family homes nationally. And that is going to keep things short up for a while until builders can build enough homes. The future of interest rates, what will drive it? Well, it's demographics, and demographics are driving inflation. We're going to talk about that one in depth today. And then you can't afford your dream home because there's some strategies we can build around that. So I'm going to put out a message, explain the message, and then the MOFer might be something like this, Tammy. It's the offer for immediate response is I put the message out, whether it be in a phone conversation, whether it be in an email, whether it be in a social post. And the MOFer is if you have any possible interest in buying or selling a home in the next 12 to 24 months, find out why the right time might be right now. Call me to schedule a no obligation strategy session. Now, Tammy, I talk about this thing called the message in the MOFer. And we put it out 12 to 24 months. And there was a time when we said, don't meet with anybody that isn't ready to do something in the next 90 days. And yet today, if anybody's got any plans next 12 to 24 months, why do I want to get to the kitchen table now?
Well, it's so you can keep the conversation going. And right now, with the market changing as rapidly as it has been, that timeline could shrink. Um, and yet it's building your pipeline. We've got to get back to the pipeline, Steve.
Well, and then where else am I going to get to be that trusted advisor. That's not some of these, if they've got an interest and I've got to get them past maybe a lot of limiting thoughts about the market, I've got to sit down belly to belly, eyeball to eyeball with them and have some resources, some tools to explain the opportunity of the market right now. And, of course, that's going to be different in every one of your markets. And yet some of it's going to be the same. Interest rates, for example. We're going to talk about interest rates today and how an interest rate conversation could get you to more kitchen tables now instead of later with people who might have an intention over the next 12 to 24 months. So, Tammi, let me go back to our slides as we continue here. And so we're going to move pretty quickly on to some of these messages and MOFers and Tammi, we can put a lot of messaging out through email. We can put a lot of messaging out socially, and yet we go back oftentimes and we talk about. Susan Scott talks about this idea. Susan Scott of Fierce Conversations, that the conversation is the relationship, and we're going to model for them in a moment the care conversation. But speak to us about the importance of the conversation, because I think there's many that would like to hide from having conversations, and speak to that, however.
Yeah, it always makes me laugh because you know what I'm going to say, right? Like, yeah, we communicate so heavily through text right now as a society. And the truth of the matter is, we can use texting as a tool, and yet texting is not how you keep a relationship alive. You've actually got to have conversations with someone, whether it is face to face or it's voice to voice over the phone. I promise you that I cannot keep a relationship alive with my husband if all we did was simply text. I don't think that Bruce is going to go for that, right? So, we've got to have the conversation. And these are people that already know, like, and love you. So, keep the relationship going by honoring that relationship and picking up the phone.
Yeah. And if you're of that generation or your database of that generation where most communication is occurring through text or messenger or something of that nature, in your text or message, simply say, hey, really got an important conversation. I would love to connect. What's a good time for us to talk this week? And use text or use messenger to queue up an actual conversation. So we're going to model for you what we believe is the number one conversation that will winterize your business and set you up for a spring explosion right now. And it's simply the care call to your database. And we're going to incorporate a business conversation through a simple question. And we're going to make sure it doesn't feel wonky. And you'll notice in the setup what we've done to make that happen. So, Tammi, if you're ready, let's go ahead and have the conversation. We good?
Let's do it.
Yeah. So, ring ring.
Hello.
Hey, Tammi, Steve Schlueter over at Keller Williams. How you doing?
Good, Steve. How are you?
Oh, fantastic. Hey, thanks for taking my call. I was reaching out to a bunch of my friends and peeps and our clients this week just to kind of give you a little update on the real estate market. I've been getting so many calls, Tammi, from a lot of people just confused about what are interest rates going to do this year, and is the market going to crash? And I thought I'd just reach out and shed some light on things, and just see if I could help a little bit or shed some light on kind of what's happening in our market. And before I get into that, though, just tell me how'd y'all spend the holidays, you and Bruce?
Oh gosh. Well, we spent time in Costa Rica, wrapping up the end of the year in super hot weather. It was pretty awesome.
Costa Rica. I've not been. Would you put it really high on the list for somebody that's not been?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would say top 5.
Yeah. What was the number one highlight?
Warm in December, like
Warm in
really
December. Got that for sure.
monkeys. Yeah.
Monkeys and warm in December and maybe little umbrella drinks and all that good stuff, right? Well, Tammi, as I said earlier, the reason I was calling today is just kind of shed some light on things about the real estate market. There seems to be a lot of confusion out there. And I'm just curious, what are you hearing about the real estate market?
Oh gosh, Steve, that interest rates are high and they're probably going to come down just because we're in election year and things like that.
Yeah. Well, and we're hearing that a lot. I mean, it's just there is a lot of speculation that will the new year being an election year bring things down, and regrettably, we just had a jobs report that came out for December that was so strong that, and I say regrettably, it's good for people getting jobs, and yet it was so strong that they're fearful that maybe we're not having as big a handle on controlling inflation because there's more people working, more pressure on, on inflation. And, what we're concerned is that, well, frankly, that the federal government's more concerned about inflation than they are what you and I pay for mortgage rates, and that they may stay somewhat elevated. I'm just curious, though. It sounds like you're kind of watching interest rates. What you and Bruce pondering a move or something, or what's got you watching interest rates?
No, actually, I've got a nephew that is a couple of years out of college, and over the holidays we were able to see him, and he mentioned that, he's waiting for the rates to come down so that he can do something this year.
Oh, wow. Well, that's what a great move, a couple of years out of college to work towards being a homeowner. What a great thing he'll do to get himself, set up for the future. Um, Curious. I mean, here's what we're noticing, Tammy. We really believe that this little dip we've got right now in interest rates, where they've come down from 8 to now almost 8%, now to about 6.5, maybe a dip is maybe as low as we're going to see it with some of the pressures that are out there. You think your nephew would be open to just a no obligation consultation, just to explore and maybe see what the opportunity might be sooner rather than later, given that we've got this current dip in rates?
I would think so.
Yeah.
Based on what you're saying, it sounds like we should totally do that.
I don't know his situation overall, but we could sit down. I tell you what's your nephew's name?
Duncan,
I'm sorry?
Duncan.
Duncan. Okay. Well, I tell you what, if you'd be so kind, if you would connect us via text and say, this is Steve, my realtor, and he's got some insights on interest rates that, I thought you might find interesting. Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
That'd be awesome. That'd be great. I'd love to chat with him. Hey, Tammy, thanks for that. And then I'll take great care of Duncan and see if we can't serve him or not. And hey, before we wrap up, like I said, I just wanted to shed light on thing. Any questions you have for me about real estate, or is there anything else we can do to serve you right now?
I don't think so. I think I'm good. If you can take care of Duncan, that'd be great.
Yeah. So tell me, so you had Costa Rica during the holidays. What's anything big on tap for the year ahead? Where are you going now?
We have not planned this year. I know you know us, and that's crazy, and we do not have it planned yet.
I suspect you will probably have a plan very soon, however. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I tell you what, we've had a couple of great vacations in the last couple of years overseas. I don't know if y'all have any interest in any of that, but just Egypt, Africa, South America, any travel plans in those areas, feel free to reach out. I'll share with you contacts we have if any of that sounds good. Hey, Tammy, thanks so much for taking my call, and I'll look for Duncan's. You connect Duncan and I on text. You think you'll be able to do that today? Would that be possible?
Absolutely.
Perfect. And then I'll let you know how that goes, and we'll catch up again real soon. Okay.
Sounds good.
Take care. Bye.
All right.
So, Tammy, break that down for us a little bit.
Well, and first of all, it was just a very natural, like, flowing call. You were very clear that you were calling just to shed light on what was going on with interest rates. And I know that you're going to talk about the two things that we get to do, right, are either educate or validate.
Mm-hmm.
When you asked me what I was hearing, and I said, well, hey, interest rates are high, and yet they might come down because of the election year. You had an opportunity either educate me if maybe my thought process was off, or validate what I said, that I was correct.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a really important piece, right? Is just to be able to educate them. And I trust that you all heard, and it's something that you should all go out and pull up right now, was the latest jobs report that just came out. Because that jobs report is indicating that, guess what? These rates may not come down because of pumping more money into the jobs and into our economies, which is driving up inflation. So the only thing the Fed can do to keep it down is keep those rates up. So, if we sit back and we allow people to just wait, and we're not the ones educating them, then guess what? I might not have connected you with Duncan.
Yeah. And then Duncan may have sat there on the sideline, throughout much of this year, waiting for a big election dip to hit so he can get his sub 6% interest rate and it not come.
Right.
And what opportunities did we maybe miss in the market because he was absent from the market? And I want to go back to what you heard Tammi. I'm going to repeat it again because I think what Tammi said was so important is I said I was going to shed some light on the market. And rather than just espouse all that I knew about the market, I asked a question. What are you hearing about the real estate market? Or what do you know about the real estate market? Either one of those. And based upon that, you kind of get a sense of whether they're really actively looking at the market or what's important to them to know. And then again, you've got that option to validate or educate. And let's talk about what validate means. Validate means we have enough knowledge broadly on these topics that we can come back and specifically, if I believed that interest rates were going to come substantially down in election year, and I'd say, Tammi, you're right. Here's what we've seen every election cycle since blank. And I would have specific things to support that being accurate. In this case, I see it more as an educate because we do know the Fed is more concerned about inflation than they are mortgage rates.
Yeah.
And there are some current and new inflation pressures that weren't expected before we had the big little dip that we had just seen. And so I can educate in that case. So let's go through back to our slides, and then we're going to get right into today. How do I educate people on things like interest rates? What are some tools and resources to do that so that it just doesn't feel like an opinion that I'm giving somebody? It's based and founded in something true, accurate research so that we're believable and we get them. This is where we really become that trusted advisor. So let's go back to our slides. And as we dig into this, now I want to just quickly go over one of the things that we did in that conversation. So we practiced something we call the Ford sandwich. And one of the things we teach in Never Ending Referrals is how do we make these business conversations conversational and weave in empathy and connection. And we do it by, well, I set up the call, you notice, where I said I had a business purpose to it. And I've kind of weaved that into the salutation. And I do that because I don't want the transition to the business portion of the call to feel weird. And so I just let her know there's going to be a business component to the call. And then I asked her a Ford question. What'd you do during the holidays? And she talked about Costa Rica. I asked a couple of follow-up questions around that trip just to create a further dialogue. And then I transitioned to the purpose of the call, which was a real smooth transition where I said, Tammi, as I said, the reason I was calling today was, and then I transitioned the purpose of the call.
No, I like to do. I'll back you up.
Whoop. Transition to the purpose of the call.
No, it wasn't bad.
Okay, somebody's got you're coming through. It wasn't bad, you said. So please do. I trust it wasn't too bad. Thank you.
I read like 2 books a year.
Brianne, that was Brianne. Okay. And then I've closed with a forward question. What kind of travel plans do you have for the year ahead? Based upon her answer, had a follow-up question. Plus, I made an offer. We've got some resources to help you as well. And then I closed out the call. And there actually was a MOFR built into the purpose of the call conversation because we revealed a possible opportunity or a need with Duncan. And so I went ahead and inserted the MOFR in there, which is the no obligation consultation. And would she connect me via text? Tammi, any last thoughts on that before we move on?
Nope, you touched on.
So let's go into this. And by the way, if you're familiar with our program, Never Ending Referrals, we're the creators of DTD2, that thing that maybe you've experienced in Bold or elsewhere or with your coaching program and your market center. And the thing that maybe you've loved to hate, and yet it's the discipline that thousands of agents in Keller Williams are doing today to make these calls systematic. And the way DTD2 works, of course, is you're calling a 2-letter group a week by last name. So A and W week, it's everybody whose last name begins with A, last name begins with W, gets their call this week. And Tammi, the great thing about DTD2, amongst many things, and we'll talk more about that, in Never Ending Referrals, if you should care to join us and find out more about our community, it allows us to have the same conversation for 13 weeks. And we get really great at these conversations because there's 13 2-letter groups. And so essentially, Tammy, I just need to have 4 conversations a year.
That's it.
A couple of them can be market update. A couple of them can be, some of our business to business strategy. And yet that's not why we're here today. And I just want to remind you of DTD2. In our follow-up email to you, we'll have the current DTD2 schedule so that you can make sure we're on track. You're on track for having these consistent conversations. All right, Tammy, we're going to have some fun with them real quick.
All right.
Open up your chat box, everybody. I want you to go to the chat. And in the chat, I want you to put, and listen carefully before you answer. It's going to be O for optimist, P for pessimist. But you don't know what I'm talking about yet, so don't answer until I say go. So when it comes to interest rates, I'm going to ask, are you an optimist or a pessimist? Or do you go, or is it, maybe it's I for indifferent. Don't, not yet, not yet, not yet, not yet. Optimist means I believe that rates are going to be sub 5.75% in the next 18 months. Pessimist believes, I don't believe that. In fact, they may not be much lower than they are right now. Indifferent goes, I have no idea. So which one are you? Let's see what we've got here. Got a few neutrals, got a lot of O's, got a lot of P's. I don't know, Tammy, what are we seeing here?
I think it almost looks like it's down the middle.
It's kind of all over the place, but it's kind of down the middle. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. Realist, electioneer, estimated to be 6% by end of year, says Todd. All right, let's go. And in fact, by the way, even when you look at the experts, it's all over the place. And yet what happens is a lot of times here's the reality, Tammy. There's so much clickbait out there because people just want to get read. And, what can I build a story around right now? And when we think about this thing called interest rates, one of the things I encourage you to do is watch the headlines and be a student of the headlines. And what I find is a lot of people, they kind of forget some of the headlines and they get caught in the hype of maybe the current moment. Now, before we look at what the explanation might sound like to somebody considering a move and is waiting for maybe lower interest rates, which I'm not a big proponent of actually going to happen much beyond what we've seen right now as the current dip, is what are some things that I need to pay attention to? And so let's go back and look at some headlines let's go back to the Fed. And the Fed said, when they skipped the interest rate hike back in September, what did he say? He said, policymakers left the door open for additional increases by end of the year, which wound up not happening. And yet here's the thing, you don't ignore what they say. And indicated that rates are likely to remain at peak levels longer than previously expected. He went on, we're prepared to raise rates further if appropriate. And here's another key sentence. And we intend to hold policy at a restrictive level until we're confident that inflation is moving down sustainably toward our objective. Now think about that word sustainably. And then we'll look at a more recent article, like in the last couple of days, about some of the Fed notes that came out after all the hype around lower interest rates. What are the things that drive inflation, which drive interest rates? GDP. So back in October, gross domestic product surged 4.9% in the third quarter. In other words, you guys were spending money. And because you were spending money, there's a lot of inflow of economic stimulus driving the economy. They went in the same article, strong household finances, and balance sheets for most households still looking pretty strong. Now here's the jobs report that came out this week. The 216,000 jobs added was way above expectation. And let's look at some points in the article, and this was from ABC News. And hiring in December far surpassed economist expectations and rebuked concerns of a recession in coming months, according to the data released to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It said the economy added 216,000 jobs, unemployment rate held steady at 3.7%, historically low. The resilient job market aligns with optimism many observers have about the U.S. could avert an economic downturn, achieving a soft landing in which price increases return to normal. That's all great and good. Let's go down here. And by the way, here was a click to an article earlier in the month, mortgage rates plummeting, should home buyers jump in the market? That's just a hyperlink. Here's the interesting thing. However, the good economic news may pose a challenge for the Federal Reserve as it tries to cool the economy and slow price increases. So we have to go take that and take in consideration things the Fed has said before. Here it goes on to say the blockbuster jobs report on Friday could delay the Fed's recent announcements to cut interest rates in 2024, a landmark move that could begin to reverse a near historic series of rate hikes. Read that sentence. Would begin to reverse the near historic series of rate hikes. Fed's recently, where did I say this? Could delay the Fed's recently announced plans. Now, and here's an economist who said the report does not scream rate cuts, per Olu Sonola, the head of U.S. regional economics at Fitch Ratings. So all of a sudden, you have a different tone just a few days later about what might happen. December appropriately rounded out the year when payroll gains simply refused to slow. So we've got payroll that's continuing to see growth, despite headwinds from higher interest rates. In turn, according to some economists, the Fed risked a rebound of inflation if it cuts interest rates too quickly. An initial burst of economic activity for an already robust economy could hike demand and raise prices once again. And then it went on further. Here was what the Fed actually said in the minutes that kind of spooked the stock market a little bit. Speaking at a press conference in Washington, D.C., Fed Chair Jerome Powell urged caution about the outlook for the central bank's effort to cool the economy and slow price increases. Inflation has eased from its highs, and this has come without significant increase in unemployment. That's good news, said Powell. But inflation is too high. Ongoing progress is bringing it down is not assured, and the path is uncertain, he added. So, Tammi, when you read all that, let's pause there for a minute. What do you take?
That right now is the best time to jump in. If you were going to make a real estate move, the rates have come down. We've seen them start to creep up over the last couple of days, on the heels of what you just read and what came out. So right now would be the greatest time for somebody to jump in, because again, if they go down, the opportunity to refinance is there. However, when we look at what they just disclosed, and we're going to walk through the history of this in just a moment, this is the best time.
Well, and here's what I would say, Tammi, and by the way, you don't get into this kind of conversation with somebody over the phone. This is when you get to a kitchen table and you educate people, and you've got to build tools and resources. So copy articles, take some of the slides. In fact, we're going to send you these slides, as well when this is done. So if you're screenshotting and doing all that, don't worry. We're going to send it all to you for attending. But let's go back. I'm going to look at one more article, and then Tammy's going to walk you through a possible conversation around this as well. Now, here was an article on the 5th that came on the heels of this last one. Mortgage rates have stopped sliding. What could push them higher? And this was in Barron's. Again, this is another respected medium. Home buyers, investors should keep their eyes on an upcoming inflation report, which could be the next catalyst for a big move in a closely watched mortgage rate benchmark. Says mortgage rates are broadly expected to move slower this year as inflation eases and the Federal Reserve cuts its targets rates. But hotter than expected economic data could put upward pressure on mortgage rates in the near term. In terms of implications for the housing market, this data is likely to keep interest rates from falling further at this point. And yet we do expect mortgage rates to drift down over the year as the economy slows, says the Mortgage Bankers Association. And yet, Tammi, they've been saying that for 2 years, right? Or for a year. I mean, and it's been, what's getting ignored is what the Fed has really said. Down here, better than expected economic data could shake investors' expectations for future rate cuts, blah, blah, blah. So that being said, we're going to look at 4 slides. By the way, these come from Keller Williams Research, and Tammy's going to show you how with 4 slides, you can build a simple conversation, and you can support it with things like, articles that we shared with you. And by the way, one of the things I would, if you're an iPhone user, subscribe to Apple News. It's a subscription, and yet I could see all these things and train it to give me articles on these things, and it keeps this stuff in front of me. And I'm not hunting through every possible medium. But we're going to look at the history of interest rates and what story that tells. The unemployment levels, we're 3.7 right now. We're averaged about 3.6 for 2023. We're going to look at the jobs environment and the inflation environment. And Tammi, so take us through with these 4 slides, what might be a conversation that I'm having with somebody to educate them on the interest rate, past, present, future?
Well, this is what I would do is when we send this all of these slides out to all of you, take this slide in particular and print it out and have it with you when you're having conversations, and also have it if you're doing a Zoom meeting like we're doing today. And what I would do talking about interest rates would be if someone were telling me that they were going to wait and they were going to sit back and just wait till these cool off, they're coming down, I'm just going to watch. First of all, validate what they said, I mean, don't make them wrong. I absolutely understand that. And yet, would it be okay if we look at the history of mortgage rates and what drives those so that you can make a really great decision today? And so I would start in the upper left and talk about mortgage rates in general. Now, you'll see if I go back to about 1990, on average, they're just under 6%, which, by the way, we're not that far off from that right now. And yet, if I go back to 1972, on average, they were just under 8%. Now, if someone in 1972 were making a decision on whether or not to purchase a home and they were going to wait until those interest rates came down below 8%, it was 20 years before that happened again. 20 years. So the waiting game might have taken them out of homeownership altogether, or what they were paying for the home was much higher. Now let's talk about the things that contribute to what the Fed does around interest rates. And the number one thing that we're looking at in the upper right hand corner is unemployment. Now, Steve, when you look at the last 2 years and the job report that just came out, again at 3.7, and you look at the chart here, when was the last time that we had unemployment rates that low? Never. You're muted. So yeah, it was never, right? The last 3 years have been unprecedented, and we have not had that. So let's dig into that a little bit more. And if you go down to the bottom left, you'll see that what we were looking at is about 9.5 million job openings, and yet only about 6 million people available and looking to fill those jobs. Now, Steve, that math does not work in Mooresville, North Carolina. We don't have enough people to fill all the job openings, which means employers are doing what in order to be the one that wins the employee?
Well, they're raising wages. I mean, think about the fast food lane near you. Does everyone have a hiring, and has the hourly rate gone up and up and up and up over the course of the last 2 years? And that's just evidence to what we see right here.
It is. And one of the articles you just showed us, showed that on average, Americans are making 37% more. Not everybody, and yet on average, 37% more, which means that they're pumping money into the economy, which is then affecting the lower right-hand side, which is the inflation. Right now, what is the number that they're looking to keep inflation under?
Well, the target number is 2, and I've heard economists say that that's unrealistic, and yet that's what they're striving for.
It is. It is. And so when we put all of this together, right now, let's talk about how it all works. Number one, unemployment historically low, inflation very high because we're pumping money into the economy. Now, Steve, what I'd like to do is let's take our attention back up to the upper left hand. Okay, now in that 20-year span, let's say 1972 to roughly maybe 90. What segment of our population were in their largest spending years?
The boomers.
So baby boomers were in their peak spending years because they had growing families and they were pumping money into the economy. So now if I go back down to where we are today, people are making more money than they've made in years. What segment of our population are the largest, by the way, and just walked into their highest spending years?
Millennials.
Yeah, it's the millennials.
Mm-hmm.
And so while I don't have a crystal ball, what I do have is the gift of history and what drives the numbers that impact the mortgage rates.
Mm-hmm.
And when we look at where we are today, at 6.5, 6.7, I think this morning I saw 6.7. And we look at even on average, going back to 1990, sitting right at about 6%. If we find a home that matches what it is that you're looking for, and you can afford that payment, today is the right day to make that decision, because you can always go back and refinance it. And the reason I brought all this up to you today is, Steve, I don't wish for you to be somebody that, like in 1972, was sitting on the sidelines waiting for them to come down to a place where they may not ever go. Look at that, 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That says it right there, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Tammy, when we think about this, then, you have to have a way of communicating this. And of course, one of the things that we have done with is put a consulting guide together for our folks that are in our Never Ending Referrals community and in our market centers. And this is the research behind that. A gentleman economist named Harry Dent, and he said peak spending, is going up. If I'm sitting down with a consumer, I said, so let me ask you a question. Let's say they're in their mid 40s. I said, when you guys started growing your family and you were in your 30s, early 40s, were you spending more money then than you were in your 20s? And they're going to say yes. And I said, now in your mid 40s today, are you spending more money today than you were in your 30s? And usually that's the point where they're getting cars for kids and college scholarships, or I'm sorry, college tuitions, and things like that are on the horizon. And so the research done by economist Harry Dent said the peak spending years, they're beginning to accelerate. And see, the millennials aren't even at the top yet, and yet they're at the family formation era, and they're going to continue to be a spending force for maybe 20 years, Tammy. And and you look at this, the reason we had the dip after the baby boomers, the Gen Xers were a much smaller generation. And then we started to see generational growth, birth rates, in the mid late 70s start to pick up. And here we have this huge generation, the millennial generation, that is now entering, into their family formation years. And the oldest of them will be hitting their peak spending years by 2028. And so how do I communicate that? Well, this is a lot. It might be one of these things where I just simply develop a guide like we've developed, that we share with our folks that are in our program and with folks in our market center. How do I have this conversation and educate people about the market? So Tammy, let's switch gears. There's another fear that sometimes consumers have today, and that is the market going to crash. And you think the market's going to crash?
No.
No. And yet how do we give them that assurance is other than just opinion? And this would be, go find again the evidence out there in articles. Here's an article from CNBC, and again, we'll send you these slides. I'm just going to not go through this in much detail. He said, building more homes amid sluggish inventory is also key. One of the key things. So sluggish inventory, they need more home stock. Here you have part of the article, CNBC, the biggest reasons that so few homes are up for sale, that the law of supply and demand aren't working normally. Even with demand hit by affordability woes, buyers who are out there have to compete with so few homes that prices have stayed close to balanced. And a lot of times we say it's the interest rate lockup. It's because people aren't selling their homes because they have a low interest rate. And yet here in the same article, builders are kind of the problem. Redfin chief economist Daryl Fairweather Fairweather said that we've barely begun to address the long-term housing shortage. Freddie Mac estimated that 3.8 million homes, which Freddie Mac estimated at 3.8 million homes before the pandemic, a number that has likely grown since. And so we go back and we look at this. Same article. It could take until 2026 to see a normal real estate market. So interest rate, and by the way, maybe not then. Look at what the millennial, what that 72, 73 to 92, 93, era was like. Not going to go through this one. You'll have this, but let's go to this point. So one of the things I can do to educate, and again, here's more Keller Williams research to help you. You got to get articles though to validate this stuff, to help them see it in terms other than just our opinion.
Right.
And we noticed when the Great Recession hit, we went from 1 million housing starts a year to 622 to 445, and we stayed in the fours for 3 years, 400,000.
Mm-hmm.
And then the dotted line is the number of housing starts required to stay current with new household formation. And you notice that we fell below that in 2008, and we didn't get back to it, Tammi, till 2021. And then we were barely at it in 22, and now we've dipped below it again. And so that 3-point-something million is all these homes that didn't get built that for that millennial generation and new household formation needed to be there. And so until we get more like these 1.7s and 1.4s that we had before the Great Recession, this is going to be an ongoing issue of tight inventory. So if you have a seasonal dip in your market, this might be the time. Take advantage of the dip before the tight inventory or spring markets come and take off. Here's another great article, was in MoneyWise. Should I wait for the housing market to crash even further before buying a house? And here's 3 reasons why right now could be the very best time to jump in. And I love this comment. They said, and I think this is a great buzzword to say this when you show people these graphs, by 15 years and 1 million miles, we're not in 2008. And then Dave Ramsey, who's highly respected, says why you shouldn't wait for mortgage rates to go down to buy a home. And not going to go through this in detail. You'll have this, and yet, go find those supporting articles. He does say that if you're going to buy a home, make sure you don't have consumer debt and you've got a rainy day fund and your down payment and you can afford the house payment at today's rates and HOA fees. And then you look at my market, one of my markets, where we looked at, people say, well, we're waiting for it to crash. And this is part of the Austin Metro. And I said, well, we already did. That was February 2023. We came 25.2% off of the peak. And we're since then recovering from that. Then, of course, we were at 117% of list price, then 107. Now we're 94.9. And what does that mean? So, Tammi, what does this tell me? If I had to pay 117 of list before, today I can pay 95. What does that tell me?
Tells me I've got some negotiation room and some concessions. I might be able to buy down my interest rate.
Yeah, what if the message was, did you know you can still get a rate for 5% today? And with 6 discount points, I can probably get it pretty darn close.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than, and maybe I pay full price and I get a concession of 6%. This is what builders are doing, is a lot of them are building that into their pricing so they can make interest rates the value proposition. There's no reason we can't do that, with resales as well. And is the market going to crash? Well, here's the great thing, Tammi. Let's go back. Just like we were looking at housing stock and we saw a dip in housing inventory, we saw the dip in median home price as we went into the Great Recession. And we didn't really recover from the Great Recession until 2012. And this long-term blue line is the long-term 4% historic appreciation rate for residential single-family homes. And you notice that we never even got back to the trend line until 2021. And the projected 382 of finishing up the year, that's only 7% above the trend line, 4% long-term trend line, versus we were 21% above the trend line in 2006. So Tammy, what that tells me, as it said, by 15 years and a million miles, this is not what?
Now we're not that far off.
Yeah, it's not 2008. It's not that time. And yet these are the conversations. This comes out of the shift book. And, one of the things that we teach in our market of the moment, parts for our never ending referrals community is these conversations. Right now, we've hit past the market peak for a lot of our markets. We've come down. We are either in the safe zone today. Maybe your market hasn't hit bottom. Most have probably gone through a dip and are on the way back up. And yet right here, this is what we call the point of realization. Tammy, we don't know a market has shifted until what?
Till it does.
Till we're past it. And by the way, even if it was here and it was just teetering around somewhere around the bottom here of a cycle, that's what we call the lucky zone. And interest rates might be higher, and yet the long-term appreciation trend, time becomes your friend. What is it? What's it? Gary says, don't wait to buy real estate. It's buy real estate and wait. And again, build a resource, a tool to help you have these conversations with your consumer today. Help them understand your local trends and what's happening in your trends. So Tammy, here's where we went today. And I think, just in some of the few things we showed you, go look at your market. Tammy, what are the 5 parts of the real estate agent's job description that we teach in Bold?
Lead generate, lead follow up, go on appointments, negotiate contracts, and practice and role play.
See, there's a 6th one now. If you're going to be the trusted advisor, you have to do the 6th. And the 6th is you got to study the market. You've got to do market research, your market, understand the trends, and you have to be able to disseminate that in a way that are messages that cause the consumer to have enough curiosity to attach to your MOFR, which is to sit down at your kitchen table, their kitchen table, to come to your office and have a conversation about what they're thinking about real estate so they can make an educated choice versus maybe sit on the sidelines confused. So Tammy, we're going to take them through a couple of just last things in a moment, but just before we get into those, what else do you want to add to this whole idea of being the trusted advisor and educating your consumer today?
I think the biggest thing is, Steve, we have to embrace the market change. We came out of a speed market. I mean, how many of you are exhausted coming out of what you were doing, having to jump the moment something hit the market, right? And you just walked into a skills market, and it can create some anxiety in the beginning until we learn what those skills that are going to be required are. And this is truly where you build relationships and capture mind share with people, because you have the ability to do what we just walked through today. And it just means go out and get educated and learn how to interpret, what those messages are that the news outlets are putting out. And it's how we capture market share right now.
Yeah, it's that simple. And, here's what I'm going to share with you guys. Let me just go through a few last thoughts as we wrap up this session. Again, we're going to send you the care conversation framework for that. And I'm sorry, just a second. I got a distraction. We're going to send you the care conversation. We're going to send you the slides, so you'll have access to that. And we're going to send that with the recording. So as soon as this recording is posted and prepped, then we will send that out to you. Here's what I would say. Remember the trust triangle. We're going to build trust through the logic. Again, got to educate ourselves and educate them through the empathy and the authenticity of just simply having real conversations. If you would like to get better at this and you would like to become part of a community that is building an army of trusted advisors, Tammy and I would like to invite you to join our Never Ending Referrals community. We actually have our Never Ending Referrals 2024 kickoff today at noon Central, where we begin with session 1, going through the 8 core lessons of Never Ending Referrals. And the thing that we do quarterly is we also have this kind of session where we go through and what's the market of the moment update? What are the conversations that we have to be having? And what we're going to be doing for the first quarter is every week sending you what we believe is the latest consultative dialogue around interest rates, the market, the economy, so that when you're asking that question, what are you hearing about the market? You've got the latest stuff, and we're going to help you curate that so that you're really positioned to be out there and be that trusted advisor. If you'd like to find out more about how to join our community, there's a link right now in the chat where you can go straight there. The session at noon is 1 hour. Each session is 1 hour. We meet 3 Mondays a month live. You also have a portal where you have access to previous recordings, expert interviews, resources that we keep available for you. You have on-demand learning. If you say, hey, I'm doing a client event in February and I want to really learn more about client events, you can go to the session on client events and get all the tools and resources that you need. So again, there's a link in the chat, or you can go to neverendingreferrals.com to find out more and just click on the link to join us. Again, we go live today at 1 o'clock, and the fee is $39 a month to be part of our community. It's a minimum 5-month commitment, and come check us out, and we'll be sending you more and more resources as part of that community. So Tammi, last thoughts we wrap up on today.
Well, I wanted to answer Dan's question. Dan, you had asked about MREA, Millionaire Real Estate Agent. The research showed, a 12-to-2 ratio with your MET database, meaning the people that know you. And it was not 6-to-1, it was 12-to-2 because it was, a direct piece of business with that person or a referral. So for every 12 people that you communicated with systematically, you could expect 2 pieces of business. The latest research was 10-to-1. So it changed just a little bit, right? So again, 10%, right? So for every 10, one person.
Yeah. Yeah, Mark asked, can non-Keller Williams agents join our community? Absolutely. This is something for the industry. Our tech stuff is, the program is not specific on a certain CRM. So, absolutely you can join us. And thank you for being with us today. I trust this was valuable, made you think a little differently. It does make our job one where we have to spend time, researching. And I'll tell you quite honestly, what I do is with Apple News is it has a little save feature. I press the little button up there and save, and I just get headlines. And then once every few days, when I've got an hour break, or maybe I'm sitting at the car wash or whatever it is, I sit there and I start scrolling through them, and I'm saying, okay, which ones have possible messages that match the market, helping me connect dots and see things that if we're just looking every now and then, we don't see it, and our consumers don't see it. And what they do see, Tammi, is so many times they're just confused because they see contrarian thoughts and they don't know what to think. And I said it earlier, and I'm just going to say this as a wrap-up point. Just on interest rates, I asked if you were an optimist or a pessimist. I don't care which one you are. I think we probably made an argument for being the pessimist, and you may have shifted your thoughts, some of you. Whichever one you are, don't have it just be an opinion. Have a conviction around it, because people are going to move with your conviction. If somebody asks you, what are interest rates going to do? And you go, I have no idea. Well, you might qualify what you say as, I don't have a crystal ball, somewhere in there, and yet say, here's our belief, and here's what the research tells us, here's what these articles tell us, and be certain, because they will borrow your certainty to be able to move forward. You can't be indifferent today. You're not going to be an advisor. All right.
So let me answer a couple of questions we've got here. So yes, 12 noon, 1 o'clock Eastern. Right, so somebody asked about Eastern time. So it's noon Central. Eastern is 1 hour ahead. I'm in an Eastern time zone, so I'm one of you. And then you asked what was included with Never Ending Referrals, and we are live the first 3 Mondays of the month for an hour. We also have the online portal, so everything that we do live is also recorded. So if you can't attend a session, then it's automatically uploaded into your portal. When you join, all the recordings that we have done, oh my gosh, Steve, for like several years, are in there. There's hundreds of videos in there. We've got interviews with top agents in our company that have blessed us with the ability to interview them around specific niches that they use to like really slay it in their businesses with their database. And so we've got people that absolutely kill it around, oh my gosh, client events is another great one. We've got several things around that. So, you've got access to that 24/7. It's a great resource library. I still go back in there, Steve,
Yeah.
still go back and pull things out of there.
Absolutely. Find out how Tammi and Bruce do food truck open houses, and how it just impacts their securing listings in their farm. I mean, all that kind of stuff that's in there that just takes you thinking in a whole different realm.
It's fun.
And guys, thanks for being with us. We value your time. We trust you got great value, and trust many of you we'll see you on Never Ending Referrals maybe in an hour. So see you later.
That's
Take
right.
care.
Thanks, everybody.